Welcome to Conspiracist. Today, we're diving into a really complex topic. The hypothesis that governments might be concealing evidence of, well, a secret space program.
Right. And we're going to look at some specific pieces of information related to government space activities, trying to evaluate them objectively.
Exactly. We've got material covering things like planetary protection roles, a whole lot of classified satellite launches, a specific mission that reportedly failed, and even the idea of space weapons.
It's quite a mix. The goal isn't to prove or disprove any grand theory, but really to examine the available details and see what kind of picture emerges about government transparency, or maybe the lack thereof, in space.
Let's start with something that sounds almost sci-fi. The Planetary Protection Officer. Some headlines made it sound like NASA was hiring someone to fight aliens.
Yeah, those headlines were a bit misleading, weren't they? The reality is more grounded, though still fascinating.
So what is the main job?
Well, primarily it's about forward contamination. That's the main focus.
Forward contamination, meaning us contaminating other places.
Precisely. Making sure that our spacecraft, our probes, anything we send out there doesn't accidentally carry Earth microbes to places like Mars or the moons of Jupiter. We want to study these places in their natural state.
Right, especially if we're looking for, signs of native life. We wouldn't want to mistake our own bacteria for Martians.
Exactly. And this isn't a new idea. The role, or something like it, goes back to the 1960s, linked to the Outer Space Treaty of '67.
Okay, so it's an established international principle, avoid harmful contamination.
It is. And the job itself, it has, term limits, requires security clearance.
Which suggests it touches on sensitive stuff.
It certainly implies that, since the mission details, protocols, maybe things related to national security aspects of space exploration,
Yeah.
It's not just purely abstract science.
I remember reading a comment from a former officer, Catherine Conley. She mentioned protecting future human activities, like using resources out there.
Yes, that's a key long-term aspect. If we contaminate Mars with Earth life now, how does that impact our ability to, say, use Martian water ice later, or even set up habitats? She's the Columbia Shuttle disaster as an example.
Oh, right. Showing microbes could survive re-entry.
Exactly. Showing that terrestrial life is hardy and transfer is a real possibility. So preventing forward contamination preserves options for the future.
Okay, so mostly about protecting other worlds from us, but there is that other aspect, right? Backward contamination.
There is, yes. It's a smaller part of the current focus, but definitely part of the mandate. Planning for bringing samples back. Like from Mars.
Like the Mars 2020 rover collecting samples.
Correct. The Planetary Protection Officer is deeply involved in figuring out how to do that safely, assessing the risks, however small they might seem, of bringing potentially non-terrestrial biological material back to Earth.
So the job does involve thinking about potential extraterrestrial life, just more from a quarantine perspective than a defend the Earth one.
That's a good way to put it. It's about careful scientific containment and risk assessment, not building space lasers to fight off invaders based on current evidence. The sensational headlines really miss the main point.
All right. So that's one aspect of governmental space activity focused on biological protocols. Let's shift gears to something perhaps more directly related to secrecy. The National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO.
Ah, yes, the NRO.
Yeah.
The list of their launches is, extensive.
Just looking at the list, you see dozens and dozens of missions, mostly just designated USA, followed by a number.
And that pattern itself tells a story, doesn't it? It points to a very large, very ongoing program of launching classified payloads into orbit. The NRO is fundamentally about operating the U.S.'s intelligence satellites.
And the nicknames. Nemesis, Misty, Orion, Lacrosse, Topaz. They sound like something out of a spy novel.
They do add a layer of mystique. They likely denote different generations or types of satellites, maybe advanced imaging, signals intelligence, radar, but the specifics, they're classified.
We also see launches from all over the Cape, Vandenberg in California, even other sites, and using all sorts of rockets, big ones like Atlas and Titan, newer ones like Falcon 9, even smaller ones.
That variety points to flexibility and different mission needs. Different orbits require different launch sites and vehicles. Big satellites need big rockets. Maybe smaller, tactical ones can use smaller, faster launch options.
Right, and the orbits themselves are varied too. LEO, GSO, Molniya, even retrograde orbits. What does that tell us?
It tells us they're positioning assets for all kinds of tasks. LEO, low Earth orbit, is good for detailed imaging. GSO, geostationary, hangs over one spot, great for communications or persistent surveillance. Molniya orbits cover high latitudes. like Russia.
MEO, medium Earth orbit, for things like navigation, maybe.
Yeah.
And retrograde, against Earth's rotation.
Yeah, MEO is where GPS lives, for example. Retrograde can offer unique ground tracks for observation. The point is, they're using the full range of orbital possibilities to meet diverse intelligence requirements.
The listed functions, communications, optical imaging, ELINT, SIGINT, SAR, radar imaging, situational awareness. Give a hint.
They give categories, yes. ELINT is electronic intelligence. SIGINT is signals intelligence eavesdropping, essentially. SAR is synthetic aperture radar, which can see through clouds and at night. Vital tools for intelligence gathering.
And many missions are listed as entered service, status unknown, or presumed active, meaning they're likely still up there doing whatever they do.
That's the implication. These are operational assets, many with long lifespans, contributing to ongoing intelligence collection.
There are also mentions of failures. L7 Elwood destroyed, L21 USA 193 failed in orbit and was actually shot down by an anti-satellite weapon.
Which shows that space is hard, things go wrong, even on these high-priority programs. And the USA 193 incident, that really highlighted the reality of anti-satellite capabilities and the potential for conflict in space.
And more recently, these proliferated architecture missions, launching lots of smaller Starshield satellites. What's the thinking there?
That seems to be a move towards constellations. Lots of smaller interconnected satellites instead of a few big expensive ones. It potentially offers more resilience. Losing one doesn't cripple the system, and maybe better coverage or faster revisit times.
Plus, programs like RASR, rapid acquisition of a small rocket, sounds like wanting to launch smaller things quickly.
Agility. Being able to replace a satellite quickly or launch something for a specific timely need. It suggests a more dynamic approach compared to the old monolithic satellite model.
So the big takeaway from the NRO list is a massive, ongoing, highly classified government space program focused primarily on intelligence gathering, using diverse technologies and orbits.
Absolutely. A significant slice of space activity happens under this veil of secrecy, which leads us nicely to the Zuma satellite incident.
Right, Zuma. Launched in 2018 on a Falcon 9, SpaceX said their rocket worked fine.
They did. They reported nominal performance, even noted the fuel dump from the upper stage re-entering, which is normal.
But then reports surfaced, suggesting the satellite itself, the payload, failed to separate from the adapter built by Northrop Grumman.
That was the story circulating, yes. Based on unnamed officials or independent analyses. The suggestion was that modifications made to the payload adapter might have caused the failure.
And officially, what do we know about Zuma's fate or mission?
Officially, very little. It remains classified. NORAD, the tracking agency, lists it, but with no elements available, which is standard procedure for classified objects, whether they're working or not.
So a potentially very expensive, important secret satellite was launched, and it might have just failed to even reach orbit properly, and we don't get confirmation.
That's the situation. It really highlights the opacity. Billions of dollars, cutting-edge tech, launched for secret purposes, and its ultimate fate might remain officially unknown to the public.
It certainly fuels speculation, doesn't it, when things operate so far outside the public view?
It inevitably does. While secrecy might be deemed necessary for national security, it does create an information vacuum.
Okay, let's broaden the scope slightly. Let's talk about space weapons. The very idea suggests space isn't just for science or spying.
Indeed. Space weapons are defined as weapons for space warfare, attacking satellites, attacking Earth from space, or even intercepting missiles traveling through space. It's a concept that's been around since the Cold War.
And actively developed, at least conceptually.
Oh, yes. Both the U.S. and the Soviet Union explored various concepts. Things like anti-satellite missiles, ASATs, which we know exist and have been tested.
Even that Soviet Almaz space station reportedly had a cannon for space-to-space combat.
That's correct, a modified aircraft cannon. A startling example, perhaps, but it shows the thinking was there. Then you have concepts like the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, which involved ideas for space-based missile defense.
And space-to-Earth weapons, like orbital bombardment, rods from God.
Those concepts exist, yes. Kinetic bombardment using dense rods dropped from orbit. Whether anything like that has been seriously pursued or developed is, again, highly speculative and likely classified.
But there are treaties, right? The Outer Space Treaty.
Yes. Crucial point. The Outer Space Treaty explicitly forbids placing nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction in orbit or on celestial bodies. Sol II also had provisions.
But not all weapons, so conventional ASATs or maybe directed energy weapons wouldn't necessarily be banned.
The treaties have gaps, yes. They primarily address WMDs, Other types of space-based or anti-satellite weapons fall into a more ambiguous legal area, which is a source of ongoing international discussion and concern.
So the concept is real, development has occurred, some capabilities exist, but the full extent and current status are unclear, partly due to classification and treaty limitations.
That summarizes it well. The military dimension of space is undeniable, even if large-scale weaponization hasn't occurred in the way Cold War anxieties might have predicted. The potential is considered.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this. We have the Planetary Protection Officer dealing with biological protocols, outward and inward. We have the NRO running a vast classified intelligence satellite network. We have incidents like Zuma showing how opaque these operations can be. And we have the persistent military interest in space, including weapons concepts.
When you put it all together, you see multiple layers of government activity in space. Some public, scientific, exploratory, some highly secretive, focused on intelligence and national security, some dealing with potential risks, biological or military.
So going back to the initial hypothesis about a secret space program, does this information prove anything like that?
It doesn't prove the existence of, say, hidden alien technology or secret moon bases, as some theories propose. There's nothing in this specific information pointing directly to that. But it does demonstrate very clearly that there are substantial, complex, and highly classified government operations happening in space, far beyond what's publicly acknowledged day to day.
The sheer scale of the NRO launches, the secrecy around Zuma, the existence of ASAC concerns. It shows a level of activity and capability that operates under deep cover.
Exactly. So while this material doesn't validate specific sensational claims, it absolutely establishes a factual basis for significant governmental secrecy and advanced capabilities related to space. It provides, you could say, the documented context in which questions about undisclosed programs might arise.
It shows that the capacity for extensive hidden space activity exists within government structures.
Yes. The infrastructure, the classification systems, the budgets, they support large-scale secret projects. Whether those projects align with popular secret space program narratives is another question entirely, one that this data doesn't answer directly.
So it's a landscape where transparency is selective, where national security justifies a great deal of secrecy, and where advanced technology operates outside public view.
That's the reality these pieces of information sketch out. A complex interplay of science, intelligence, military strategy, and international law, much of it happening behind closed doors.
It certainly gives a lot to think about regarding what we know and perhaps what we don't know about governmental activities beyond Earth.
It underscores the challenge of discerning the full picture when dealing with inherently classified domains.
This exploration into government space activities, from planetary protection to classified launches and the concept of space weapons, really does reveal a complex picture.
It highlights that governmental involvement in space is far from monolithic. There are many different agencies, goals, and levels of transparency at play.
Thank you for joining this deep dive into the available information. We hope it provides some context for considering these often complex and shadowed topics.
Indeed. The reality documented here is perhaps as intriguing as any speculation.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.